A billionaire CEO needed a fake husband for one important dinner, so she chose a struggling single dad who seemed ordinary, quiet, and harmless. But when that dinner turned into a trap, he saw the pain she was hiding, and what began as a fake marriage for one night slowly became something real. Before we continue, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Maren Ellery had negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking, but she could not get through one family dinner without feeling like a child again. Her driver stopped outside a private townhouse on Beacon Hill, where warm lights glowed behind tall windows, and every polished step looked like it had been waiting to judge her. Inside that house were board members, old family friends, and her mother, Celeste Ellery, who still believed Maren's company should have gone to a man with a louder voice and a softer heart. Maren looked down at her bare left hand. The empty space where a wedding ring should have been had become the problem. Not because she wanted a husband, not because she needed one, but because tonight's dinner was tied to the sale of Ellery Dynamics' most personal project, a medical mobility system her late father had spent years building before he died. The buyer was an old family control foundation. Their chairman, Richard Voss, claimed he cared about stability. In truth, he cared about control. He had been quietly telling investors that Maren was brilliant but isolated, powerful but cold, successful but impossible to trust. And her mother had not corrected him. So Maren made one reckless decision. She hired a husband for one dinner. Not an actor. Actors look like actors. She needed someone grounded, someone warm, someone who could sit beside her without trying to own the room. That was how she found Callum Brooks. He was not rich. He was not polished. He was a single dad who ran a small repair service and picked up evening catering shifts when business slowed down. Maren had noticed him 2 nights earlier at a charity event, kneeling beside his 7-year-old daughter, Lottie, calmly fixing the strap of her little silver shoe while executives stepped around them like they were furniture. Then a waiter dropped an entire tray of glasses. Everyone stared. Callan simply stood, helped the embarrassed waiter gather the mess, and said, "Nobody got hurt. That means it's fixable." Maren remembered that sentence. Now, standing outside the townhouse, Callan adjusted the cuff of a borrowed navy suit and looked at her with quiet doubt. "You're sure about this?" he asked. "No," Maren said, "but I'm doing it anyway." Callan gave a small, almost unwilling smile. "That's not as comforting as you think." She should have laughed. Instead, she checked his tie because her hands needed something to do. The moment her fingers brushed his collar, the air shifted. He went still, not awkwardly, gently, like he understood she was nervous and didn't want to embarrass her for needing closeness, even fake closeness. "You don't have to pretend with me before we get inside," he said softly. Maren looked up. That was the first dangerous thing about Callum Brooks. He noticed too much. "My mother will test you," she said. "I figured. Richard will insult you politely. I've worked with rich clients. Polite insults are usually just bad manners wearing perfume." This time, Maren did laugh. Just once. Small, surprised, real. Callan noticed that too. Inside, the dinner began exactly as she feared. Celeste kissed the air beside Maren's cheek and looked at Callan like he was a stain someone had missed. Richard Voss smiled too warmly. "So this is the husband no one has met." Callan placed a steady hand at Maren's lower back. "Callum Brooks," he said. "Nice to meet you." Richard's eyes moved to his hand, then to Maren's face. "Brooks," he repeated. "Should I know the name?" Callan didn't flinch. "Only if your sink broke." A tiny silence fell. Maren felt it like a knife edge. Then Richard chuckled, but his eyes stayed cold. Dinner moved from wine to contracts to quiet traps. Every question sounded casual, but landed with purpose. Where did they meet? Why was there no wedding announcement? Why had Maren kept him hidden? Callan answered without overplaying it. He gave simple details they had rehearsed, but softened them with truth. He spoke about raising Lottie, about learning patience, about how grief could make people work too hard because stopping felt like losing. Maren turned toward him before she could stop herself. He was not performing anymore. Neither was she. Then Richard slid a folder across the table. "Before dessert," he said, "we should discuss the leadership morality clause." Maren's stomach tightened. There had been no morality clause in the draft. Callan felt her hand go cold under the table. Celeste looked away, and Marin finally understood. This dinner had never been about proving she had a husband. It had been about proving she could be cornered. Marin stared at the folder, but she did not touch it. For a moment, all the noise in the dining room seemed to sink underwater. The silverware, the soft music, the low conversations from the other end of the table. All of it blurred until only Richard's smile remained clear. Callan's thumb pressed lightly against her knuckles beneath the table. Not romantic, not possessive, steady. What morality clause? Marin asked. Richard leaned back, as if he had been waiting all night for that question. A standard protection, he said. The foundation cannot attach itself to unstable leadership, especially leadership with personal disclosures that were hidden from stakeholders. Marin's jaw tightened. Celeste finally looked at her daughter, but there was no comfort in her eyes. Only warning. Callan noticed. He always noticed. Richard opened the folder and turned it toward Marin. Inside were printed photos. Some showed her entering the charity event alone. Others showed Callan with Lottie outside the service entrance 2 nights earlier. One photo showed Marin speaking to Callan in the hallway after the event, when she had asked if he would consider helping her. The angle made it look secretive, dirty, planned. Marin felt heat crawl up her neck. You had me followed? She asked. Richard gave a soft sigh. Marin, no one is attacking you. That's usually what people say while attacking someone. Callan's voice was calm, but the table went still. Richard's eyes moved to him. You may not understand how rooms like this work, Mr. Brooks. Callan nodded once. Maybe not, but I understand when a man puts a trap on the table and calls it concern. Marin's breath caught. She should have stopped him. This was not his fight. Their agreement was simple. One dinner, one appearance, no personal involvement. But the look on Callan's face had changed. He wasn't angry. He was disappointed, and somehow that was worse for Richard. Celeste set her glass down. Marin, this is why I told you not to rush. People question what they don't understand. Marin looked at her mother. For years, she had mistaken Celeste's coldness for high standards. She had worked harder, spoken softer, dressed sharper, smiled less, smiled more, became whatever version of herself might finally earn approval. But tonight, under the chandelier light, she saw the truth. Her mother wasn't protecting her. She was protecting the family name from Marin's humanity. Callan leaned closer, his voice low enough that only Marin could hear. Do you want me quiet? That question nearly broke her. Not because it was dramatic, but because no one in that room had asked what she wanted. Not once. Marin looked at the folder again. Then she slowly closed it. No, she whispered. I don't. Richard's smile faded. Marin lifted her eyes. This project belonged to my father. He built it after his stroke because he hated how medical devices made people feel like problems instead of people. I will not let you use my private life to take control of it. Richard's tone hardened. Your private life became relevant when you invented a marriage to influence a vote. The room chilled. A few guests glanced at Callan's left hand. No ring. Marin's pulse pounded. There it was. The truth, almost pulled from her before she was ready. Callan could have looked away. He could have protected himself. He could have said he had been hired and walked out clean. Instead, he turned his chair slightly toward Richard. You're right about one thing, Callan said. I'm not from this world. I don't own a vacation house. I don't know which fork makes me look respectable. And yes, Marin asked me to come because she needed someone beside her tonight. Marin turned to him, stunned. But I came, he continued, because 2 nights ago my daughter watched her help a server everyone else ignored. Lottie told me, Dad, that lady looks lonely, but not mean. The room softened by a fraction. Marin blinked fast. Callan looked at her now, not the table. And when Marin asked me for help, she didn't offer to buy me. She offered to pay for my time. There's a difference. Richard scoffed. How noble. No, Callan said. Just honest. Then he reached into his jacket and took out a small folded paper. Marin frowned. Callan placed it beside her hand. I wasn't going to show you this tonight, he said quietly. But maybe you need to know before you sign anything. Marin opened it. It was a medical invoice. Then another. Then a letter from a pediatric rehabilitation clinic. Her eyes moved across the page until one line stopped her cold. Lottie Brooks, early mobility support evaluation. Marin's voice dropped. Your daughter uses one of our prototypes? Callan nodded. Your father's old pilot program. Before funding got cut, that device helped my daughter walk across our kitchen without holding the wall. The words hit Marin deeper than any accusation Richard had thrown at her. Callan was not just a hired stranger. He was living proof that the project mattered. Richard's face went pale with irritation, not guilt. That program was financially inefficient, he said. Marin looked at him, and for the first time all night, she was not shaking. No, she said. It was human. Richard looked around the table, searching for support, but the room had changed in a way no contract could control. No one was speaking, not because they agreed with Marin yet, because they had finally heard something real. Marin held Callan's medical papers in her hand, and for the first time in months, the project was not a line item, a valuation, or a legacy asset. It was a little girl crossing a kitchen without holding the wall. It was a father pretending not to be scared while invoices stacked beside the sink. It was her own father sitting in a hospital bed years ago, whispering, "Don't build machines that make people feel broken." Marin slowly stood. Celeste's eyes narrowed. Sit down, Marin. That old command would have worked once. Tonight it didn't. No, Marin said quietly. I'm done sitting through conversations where everyone discusses my future like I'm not in the room. Richard's expression sharpened. Careful. Emotion is not strategy. Marin gave a small, tired smile. That's what men like you say when emotion exposes a bad strategy. Callan lowered his eyes for half a second, trying not to smile. Marin noticed. And somehow, in the middle of the most humiliating dinner of her life, warmth touched her chest. Richard tapped the folder with 2 fingers. The board will hear about this. They should, Marin said. They should hear everything, including the fact that you added a clause without disclosure, hired private surveillance, and described a child's mobility support as financially inefficient. A murmur moved through the room. This was not applause, not a dramatic victory. It was discomfort, the honest kind, the kind that meant people were realizing they had stayed quiet too long. Celeste stood next, her pearls catching the chandelier light. You are embarrassing this family. Marin looked at her mother for a long moment. Then her voice softened. No, Mom, I spent years embarrassing myself, trying to become someone this family would approve of. Celeste's face changed, just enough to show the words had landed. Marin turned to the guests. The sale is postponed. Tomorrow morning, Ellery Dynamics will announce a patient advisory board. Parents, caregivers, therapists, and actual users will be involved before any foundation or investor gets control of my father's work. Richard rose from his chair. You don't have authority to make that decision alone. No, Marin said, but I have enough authority to stop signing things out of fear. That was the real shift. Not revenge, not power. A woman finally choosing herself without needing the room to approve. Richard left before dessert. 2 board members followed him, not proudly, but quietly, as if they wanted distance from the mess they had helped create. Celeste stayed seated, staring at her untouched wine. Outside, the night air was cold enough to make Marin breathe deeper. Callan walked beside her down the townhouse steps, his borrowed suit jacket folded over one arm. I'm sorry, he said. Marin looked at him. For what? For not staying in the role. She laughed softly, but her eyes were wet. You were terrible at being fake. I've been told honesty is bad for business. Not my business, she said. A silence settled between them. This one did not feel empty. It felt possible. Callan glanced toward the street where his old truck was parked behind Marin's Blacktown car. Lottie's asleep at my sister's place. She'll ask if the billionaire CEO was scary. What will you tell her? He looked at Marin, and the corner of his mouth lifted. I'll tell her she was brave, but she needs better dinner guests. Marin smiled for real this time. Then she reached into her evening bag and removed the diamond bracelet she had worn like armor all night. Callan frowned. Marin, relax, she said. I'm not paying you with jewelry. She stepped closer and placed the medical papers back in his hand. Bring Lottie to the lab next week. Not as a favor, not as charity, as an advisor. Callan stared at her. She's 7. She knows more about courage than half my board. His face softened in a way that made the cold night feel warmer. And me? He asked gently. Marin's confidence faltered for the first time, but not from fear. From honesty. You were supposed to be my fake husband for one dinner, she said. I know, but I like to see who you are when no one is pretending. Callan looked down, smiling like he was trying to protect himself from hope. Then he offered his hand. Not for the cameras. Not for the room. Just for her. Marin took it. 1 week later, Lottie Brooks walked slowly through the Ellery Dynamics lab, her small hand in her father's, her eyes wide at the soft blue lights and open work tables. Marin knelt to greet her, not as a CEO above her, but as someone ready to listen. Lottie looked at her and whispered, Dad said you were brave. Marin glanced up at Callan. He was watching her with quiet warmth, the kind that did not demand anything. Marin smiled. Your dad helped me remember. And as morning light filled the lab, 3 people stood together beside a machine built to help others move forward. No pretending, no performance, just the beginning of something real.